Hi, this is Tisch Aitken, and it is September 30th, 2025. What an eclipse season it has been. Wow. I knew this would be really intense just because it was a very powerful total lunar eclipse at the beginning of the month on September 7th, and it was the day after Uranus, the planet of chaos and awakening, station retrograde. So that was a double whammy. That's how we began the month, and we had a second new moon in Virgo right by the equinox, and that was at the final degree of Virgo, and it opposed Saturn in Pisces. And in the very beginning of September, Saturn, which had been transiting in the cardinal fire sign of Aries from May 24th through September 1st, dipped back into Pisces, where it is in a very challenging position. I know Saturn is in its detriment in the sign of, or it's in its fall position rather, in the sign of Aries, because it's exalted in Libra. And Aries is such a confident, cardinal, action-oriented fire sign. It's the sign of new beginnings. It's a sign of initiation and confidence. And cardinal fire, it wants to get things going. But Saturn is in its fall position because Saturn can challenge you or test you. And the sun in Aries, or the sign of Aries, wants to just charge ahead. It doesn't like being held back. But with all of that said, I have said several times, and I have noticed empirically, because this is the second round of Saturn and Pisces that I've experienced in my lifetime, and I'm quite close to the few people that were born during Saturn and Pisces. And this is a really difficult time because Saturn is about boundaries, commitment, goals, limitations. Pisces rules the ocean and is boundless and completely uncontainable. So with that said, we're trying to contain things that seem so elusive. Then you add to the fact that Neptune, which is the modern ruler of Pisces, is at the Aries point, the world point, the very first degree of the zodiac. Anything at 0 degrees and 22 degrees of the cardinal signs is at the world point, and means it could bring big events. If you have points in your chart at the world axis, you can become very well known in what you do. And when planets transit at the world point, or when eclipses occur at the world point, they have much momentum and they bring big events that are globally felt. Whether or not everybody is experiencing that transit, it affects every one of us. We are the world. And so we have Neptune at the world point through October 22nd. It retrograded on July 4th, but it's been at Aries, it's still at that, it's been in Aries rather, and it's at the world axis, meaning the very first degree of the zodiac, and that can be very creative. And obviously we're in very, very turbulent times. Eclipses eclipse people in and out of our lives. They eclipse situations. They bring things to light that we may have never had any clue about. They can change your life in an instant. And they also can eclipse great situations into your life, eventful meetings or offers or being hired for something or meeting somebody really special. It's not always negative, but usually they are uprooting. They want you to change, and they want to bring your attention to things. They want to wake you up and shake you up. And this has been quite a stir. I had somebody eclipsed out of my life at the very beginning of the month, right by the first eclipse, which was the total lunar eclipse. And unfortunately, that person was struggling with mental health issues very strongly and became semi-homeless at the end. I was trying to help him. A few of us were trying to help him, and it's a very sad situation. But I have been so focused on the fixed star Shiat, and Scheat is spelled Scheat. It was a focal point in the solar eclipse that occurred on September 21st. It was in opposition to the new moon eclipse. Saturn at that point was at 28 degrees of Pisces, and Saturn and Neptune were traveling closely together all summer. They were at the last degrees of Pisces up until the end of March. Then Neptune dipped into Aries rather, and then Saturn joined that new party in the end of May, on May 24th. But that is a cycle that occurs approximately every 36 to 37 years. The last time Saturn and Neptune met up was November of 1989, when the Berlin Wall came down. And they will meet up exactly on February 20th of next year, again at the world axis, 0 degrees of the cardinal signs. In this case, the Aries point, which is the very first degree of the zodiac wheel. It's the very first degree of the zodiac. So, and it's a degree known as the creation point. And we're all building a new identity. Aries is very connected with identity, with goals, but it's the sign of self, among other things. And one of the key words is I am. And on the global level and on the personal level, each of us is creating a new identity. And Saturn is already back in Pisces. Neptune's going to dip back into Pisces on October 22nd through January 26th. And Saturn will remain in Pisces through February 13th. And then the two are going to meet up in the sky on February 20th at 0 degrees and 45 minutes of Aries, very close to where Neptune is now. So we've all been working the last few months, taking micro steps or macro steps for achieving that new goal, that new dream of what you want to achieve. But remember, eclipses eclipse things out of our lives, and we've been going back and forth to new beginnings. The outer planets sequentially, Pluto was going back and forth, waffling back and forth from the last degrees of Capricorn to the very beginning of Aquarius. Then last November, on the 19th, it returned to Aquarius, where it'll be through January of 2044. Then Neptune entered the sign of Aries, the very first sign of the zodiac, and that began on March 30th, the day after the final eclipse in Aries. And Neptune will be in Aries through October 22nd. It got to 2 degrees and 11 minutes of Aries. Saturn then joined the party and entered Aries on May 24th. Got to 1 degree and 56 minutes. Then it retrograded on July 11th. It's back in Pisces as of September 1st. And then Uranus, the great awakener, the modern ruler of Aquarius. And remember, we're all in the new age of Aquarius. Uranus entered Gemini, where it's a lot more comfortable than in Taurus, that does not like rapid, instant change, okay? I did know a Taurus whom I loved dearly, the Swami, and his nickname was Instant Chaos, but he was an aberration because most Tauruses do not thrive on instant chaos, and he wasn't, well, he was a typical Taurus. He loved his food and he loved to collect, but he was very stubborn, but he thrived on chaos and he was really brilliant, but he knew where all his things were amongst the chaos. So that was how he operated, and not everybody can do that. So with Uranus and Gemini, there's an excitement for learning. And I have to say, I haven't been feeling much excitement at all. This last month eclipsed my energy. And, you know, whether or not you're getting hit, you're going to feel the energy. Not every eclipse season I get hit by the eclipses. Neither do you. I mean, or we'd just be rocking and rolling all the time. But this one did square my ascendant, the second eclipse, and now Saturn's squaring my ascendant, and then Neptune will be, which is just joyous. No, it's actually good because it's reminding me of what we're all dealing with, and that's Saturn and Neptune at the last degrees of Pisces. That's Bob the driver, whom I lost probably around September 9th, rather. He died, I think, about 2 days after the eclipse. That's around when we found out. And it eclipsed Bob the driver, who struggled with mental health and with self-destruction, and he's at peace now. But there are a lot of Bobs out there that may be reachable. He wasn't reachable at this point, but maybe you are. Maybe somebody you know is, who's struggling with addiction or depression or just not doing well in the time we're in. You really want to be hyper-focused on that right now. And, with Neptune joining this party, at the end of October, Neptune and Saturn transiting at the final degrees of Pisces. Again, we're in very, very turbulent times, and there was a lot of sudden loss. That's the one thing I like about social media and celebrity news, to be honest, because you see with celebrities and you see with people in the public, world news, yes, but we don't want to go there right now. There's so much with that. But we just had 2 divorce announcements, and I don't thrive on people getting divorced. It's just, that's eclipse type stuff where people finally have had enough and it's been building up. And so I saw that Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban are getting divorced. And again, that's not, I wish them totally well. There's nothing to do about them. But they're examples of things that may be going on for you. Maybe you know a couple that's been together a while where you're kind of surprised, but you're not. Or maybe there's a sudden marriage announcement. I just did a chart for a baby that was born on the day of the eclipse, which is pretty wild. Births and divorces and death happen all the time, but you'll find that you get a lot of news about sudden changes, layoffs, people getting fired, people getting promoted, people getting married, people having a baby, people getting divorced. Those kind of big announcements are much more prevalent during eclipse times. And then I think Tim Burton and Monica Bellucci are breaking up. Again, not something that's life-changing in the crazy world we're in, but we see these kind of stories, but more about health announcements with Virgo and Pisces. And in my own life, I had some sudden health announcements from people I know in the last week, and because they both deal with work and health. And I have heard of layoffs. I heard of somebody that's going to be terminated in the next couple of months. There are a lot of things we're wrapping up, because just as we got a preview of new beginnings in the last few months, and of that magic triangle, because at the end of August we had Uranus and Pluto trining each other pretty closely, and Neptune, the planet of dreams, was very closely aligned with those two. And the 3 will be very aligned next July 18th. That's when Uranus and Pluto make their first exact trine, and Neptune will also be sextiling both points. That's magic, and that was also inherent in this solar eclipse chart. And there was a kite in the solar eclipse chart saying that there's a lot of ease for learning and travel. There's already a new a new line rather, with Amtrak, where you can take trains in a faster way to get somewhere. And that's something I've predicted for a little while, and that's going to definitely happen with air travel and rail and buses and all of that. And that's important because travel has become horrendous. I dread it if I do, and I don't do it very often anymore because it usually is a nightmare in people's behavior, because Uranus and Gemini is reminding us that we need to remain relatively socialized. Now there are even these silly skits. You don't need to make a skit of the mayhem that happens on those planes when people film it, because usually it's real, and the real ones are better because they are crazier than the real ones, and they don't need actors for that one, or those ones rather. But anyway, I think that we're in a difficult time, and what's going to happen is we're going to have a lot of water this month, and I'll talk more. We do have a full moon on the 6th, but I'm just so disoriented right now that I could scramble and give you little notes about the full moon. It will be at 14 degrees of Aries, and it will officially end eclipse season. Okay, it's going to be on October 6th, and that's the day that Mercury enters Scorpio. But the bigger picture of this is that Mercury in Scorpio is a big deal because it's going to be traveling closely with Mars in Scorpio. And that's a very focused energy. Mercury in Scorpio, it'll be there through October 29th, and Mars will remain in Scorpio. It entered on the equinox on September 22nd. It will remain there through November 4th. And that's really good for getting refocused. If, like me, you got really thrown off track by the eclipses and feel very scattered, again, some people feel that strong Neptunian energy. It can be very creative. In difficult times, that can catapult people to taking action. The arts, the artists, the visionaries, the intellectuals, they can really drive them to achieve greatness. And that's what I'm really hoping with this. I think that's really, miracles are ahead of us and are possible. And this is the time in the world we need that without a question. But again, some of us are going to be going back and forth. We come up with great ideas. That grand trine, man, that is really, really lucky. When Pluto stations direct in October, it's going to be on October 13th. We're going to have, there's going to be Pluto's going to trine Uranus and sextile Neptune. And I believe Venus enters Libra that day on the 13th, and then it's going to trine Pluto and Uranus. So we're going to have a grand trine with that, and that's beautiful. But Pluto will station direct at 1 degree and 22 minutes of Aquarius, and we're in this new age of Aquarius, which is about community and what you can give to other people, how you can contribute to the collective, and about an intellectual revolution. And Uranus is the modern ruler of Aquarius and is working very much a part of that magic triangle, which is strong in 26, 27, and early 28. There are going to be a few of them. And Uranus trine Pluto, we have never had that in our lifetime. And Pluto is in Aquarius, which is very futuristic. We're already seeing the good and bad parts. I know the controversial part now is there's an actor on AI. I forgot the actor's. It's an actor. I don't know a fake actor. It's a facsimile of an actor, an AI actor. But people are getting freaked out because it looks like a real person, and what's next? And are we replaceable? We're all replaceable. We're all irreplaceable too. And we're going to have to figure out how to navigate this, because Pluto in Aquarius is obviously not going away, but Uranus and Gemini wants us to connect again in real life as much as we're doing remotely with Pluto and Aquarius. And that, to me, is our saving energy, our saving grace in a lot of ways, because the more remote we become, and I'm somebody that works remotely and has for a long time, but I've become more alienated in the last 5 years, like many of us. That is not good for our mental health, for our kindness, for our well-being, for our happiness. We are social beings, believe it or not, right? So we have to come together, okay? And so I think that remembering that Pluto will station direct, okay, so it is stationing direct on October 13th. You feel that 5 days before and 5 days after. So we're going to start feeling it the 9th of October through the 18th of October. That underscores and emphasizes and exaggerates the qualities of Pluto, the planet of death and rebirth. And we're all rebirthing ourselves with the outer planets too, working in tandem, in harmony, in early degrees and new signs. I know most of them, all the rest of them except for Pluto, will return to the signs they were transiting, meaning Saturn already has, Neptune will in October, Uranus will in November, but they'll all change signs again. Saturn in February, Neptune at the end of January, Uranus at the end of April, and then they work to form magic and miracles and infinite possibility that we have not yet seen. And so I feel inspired doing this right now because I'm kind of reminding myself of that. Because right now I'm feeling Saturn at the last degrees of Pisces. And again, like I said, we're going to be vacillating back and forth where sometimes you feel the magic. You have a dream, a daydream or a dream that's so palpable and real that you know you can magnetize it in your heart. And Neptune is the higher octave of Venus, is selfless love in its purest form. It also can be deception, it can be directionlessness, it can be escapism, lethargy, wanting to sleep all day. And I have been sleeping later lately. I've been dealing with, I'd say, mild depression. I don't think there's anything wrong with admitting that too, because maybe a little more than mild actually. But I think that many of us are. Neptune is, again, whether or not it's hitting your chart, it's at the world axis. It's very strong. And it can feel very elusive. It could also feel very inspired. Maybe you're channeling things. Maybe you're connecting with people that have passed over. Maybe you have started writing a book or painting an opus. Who knows? But Neptune can be very creative. It can be very self-sabotaging, especially when, it's close to, because it's close to, obviously, the last degrees of Pisces, just like Saturn is very close to the first degree of Aries right now. It's only 2 degrees apart, but they're still close, and something's getting dissolved, and that's something that we prepared for with eclipse season. That second eclipse was opposite Saturn and Neptune at a sign. It was opposite Saturn within a degree, and it was opposite Neptune within a degree, or 2 degrees. A degree, actually, in both cases. And so that's a big deal, because Neptune dissolves and Saturn can also end things. It can represent a turning point. And, in Virgo, which is so analytical and so over-analytical sometimes, but giving you insights of what's no longer working. A south node eclipse releases. A new moon is a time of planting new seeds, but when you've got it opposite Saturn and Neptune, and it's a south node eclipse, there were many endings. I'm not saying nobody began something in the last few weeks, and people have definitely begun new things, and some people started new jobs or got married or what have you, but there's a lot of release and letting go. And I have heard of a lot of sudden loss through social media, through friends and clients I know. I pay attention during eclipses. It's often strangers. I have no idea who they are, but the idea is that I want to see big events like that. And even, unfortunately, that crazy case out with that up-and-coming artist, David, out in California with Celeste, with that young girl. Her birthday was the total lunar eclipse. It would have been September 7th that she would have turned 15, and they discovered her body the day before. And that's awful, but there's something big to that story, obviously. And it's, and very disturbing. And again, pointing to Shiat, to victims, to people, to runaways, to people that are, well, she wasn't forgotten, but to people that are victimized, and also drugs, alcohol, dark forces, and very sad situations. So anyway, we want to work with, I know a few people that were born with their sun at Shiat, and they are miraculous. They are magicians. They are kind empaths. We have choices. And I want to say in the immediate, tomorrow, Mercury squares Jupiter at 4:59 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And they're both at the world axis. They're at 22 degrees of Libra and Cancer, respectively. Jupiter is exalted in Cancer. So we've got 0 degrees and 22 degrees of the cardinal signs are at the world point. Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. Neptune is currently at the world point, as is Jupiter. Mercury squaring Jupiter could be manifesting energy and tapping into Jupiter, which is, expansion, higher knowledge, higher wisdom. But in Cancer, expanding through your feelings. Jupiter loves being in Cancer. It's exalted there. It really is about how you feel is how you manifest often. It's not just visualizing. It's feeling the feelings you would have if you had something, or in preparation what you would be feeling to achieve something. And it's also prepping us up for Chiron, the wounded healer, squaring Chiron. And that will become exact on October 23rd, but that energy is strong through the beginning of next year, because Jupiter retrogrades at 25 degrees of Cancer on November 11th. And we're going to, feel this energy for a few months. And Chiron is the wounded healer, and it's in the sign of Aries, which is the sign of self. Cardinal fire and Aries, at one point we had 4 points in Aries earlier in the summer when Saturn and Neptune were both in Aries, and Chiron and Eris, the goddess of discord, who's Mars' sister. She's also been packing some punches this year. So we have a lot of Aries energy, and this is about feeling the wounds and the anger in order to heal. This is energy probably from a long time ago, because Cancer can represent very early memories, but also bringing some abundance and happiness. It's funny, my light just went on and off with my cat, so he wants you to see the light. And so that's what you want. You want to see, like Zoe just did, he turned on the light for you. And so we're also going to have Mercury and Mars and Scorpio the majority of the month, so there's a lot of water. I'm a Scorpio with Mercury and Scorpio. That's water, okay? And I've got my North Node in Pisces right where it is right now. That's water. And so we're going to have, by the end of the month, Mercury and Mars will be trining Jupiter, Neptune, and Saturn. Jupiter in Cancer and Saturn and Neptune in Pisces, because Neptune again will return to the final degree of Pisces. That's where it'll remain from October 22nd through January 26th. So that grand trine is very manifesting energy. Just like right now, Mercury squaring Jupiter is the glass half full. And it's, saying there's a lot of loss. I have a lot to heal, but I feel optimistic. I'm going to try as much as I can to focus on which I'm grateful. And as much as you can. It's not easy, and especially with some of these energies. But, this is a good opportunity for healing with Jupiter at the world point. We have tomorrow, Mars forms a biquintile to Neptune. That's a very lucky aspect. That occurs at, when does that occur? Later in the day. I think it's at 7:15 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. That could bring something creative or something kind of cool that comes up. And then on the 2nd of October, Venus forms a challenging aspect to Pluto, known as a sesquiquadrate. And that's when they're 135 degrees apart. And that is a difficult aspect that occurs at 5:20 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. That could be some difficulties with partnerships and relationships. We are in Libra season, which is so centered on partnerships. We've got, let's see, on the 3rd of October, Mercury forms a biquintile to Uranus, and that is very exciting, and that could bring unexpected meetings. So on one level, we're doing healing work, but on another level, we're also having exciting out-of-the-blue opportunities. So it could be good networking in the next couple of days, even though you could be doing a lot of inner healing work. That's going to be for several months, so that's not just limited to this weekend. And hopefully Mercury squaring Jupiter the very beginning of this month gives you some optimism in that deep inner search, which will not all be easy. Unquestionably, it will not be easy with Saturn and Neptune at the last degrees of Pisces. And Mercury opposes Chiron on the 3rd at 2:05 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. That underscores the wounds that need to be healed. Chiron, again, is the wounded healer, and Mercury is emphasizing what you need to heal. But remember that, again, we've got Mercury entering Scorpio on October 6th, which is the day of the full moon. I'm going to probably do a big article on that and get more. I'm feeling, again, like all of us, we have choices. I could say Saturn and Neptune are squaring my ascendant, and that eclipse did, and I feel tired, and I'm not going to do anything. Instead, I chose to take a little break to focus on self-care, and I want to now refocus. Mars is in Scorpio. That's very effective. This is the first time all year, really, that we've had Mars in a good placement. Don't forget that we began the year with Mars retrograde in Cancer, where it's in its fall position and it doesn't like being, and it opposed Pluto 3 times. And that's not fun and not easy. And it squared Pluto last week, but that's another story. So now we've got Mars in Scorpio, where it is very effective through November 4th. Mercury in Scorpio is really good for getting to the bottom of things, and when you have them traveling closely together, you can be very good at getting your work done, getting paperwork done, getting to the bottom of things, doing research, and getting back to your routines, which that eclipse may have thrown you off, or those eclipses plural, but this full moon on October 6th, again, officially ends eclipse season, but I have found with some people over the years, sometimes something will happen a month after the eclipse is exact. It may not be just that day, and something big happens for them. But technically, we're out of eclipse season, the first lunation after the eclipses, which will be October 6th. And remember, we're going to have a lot of water. We've got Grand Trine in water the last 10 days, particularly the last 5 days of October. We've got Neptune returning to Pisces on October 22nd, which will also be a part of that Grand Trine. And a Grand Trine is a flow of energy. Flow. Talk to you later. Thank you.